Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside Mike Evans. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, and we're starting to see things ramp up before free agency. How about the deal Maxx Crosby got, making him the highest non-paid non-quarterback ever? Good for Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max. What a great player. I mean, not a good player, but a great player. Fourth rounder out of like Eastern Michigan. And this is a dude, like I've sat down with a lot of defensive guys over the last 7-8 years that I've called games for Fox. Sat down with a lot of guys that, are smart defensive guys. I don't know that I've ever sat down with a guy who understands and knows the game at a deeper level than Maxx Crosby. And you wonder, like, the effort is unbelievable that he gives. He is a unrelenting machine when it comes to attacking and assaulting the quarterback. But his level of understanding of the game, from formations to motions to what the offense is trying to do, is second to nobody I've ever talked to. That dude knows the game like he was a middle linebacker, like he was a safety, like he knows the game. He could be the green dot guy, and he understands it at a level that I don't know that I've ever talked to a defensive lineman that understands it like he understands the game. And one of the reasons that dude makes so many freaking plays, and we can just discount it as, oh, he's just an effort guy, or, oh, he's just a really skilled guy, or he's a really great athlete, this, that, and the other. What sets him apart and what makes him one of the best defensive players in all of football is his understanding of the game. And, it goes back to the guys who coached him. And I tell you, Mike, it's just phenomenal. And you watch him on film, you watch him see and call things out, motions come across, and he's like, hey, you can see he's like pointing, hey, over here, right here. And then all of a sudden, you can see them bringing a guy in that's going to crack on him, and whoop, he slips it, and he's out tackling the quarterback, and the quarterback thinks he's got the boot keep protected because he's got the little pin flat or whatever it is. And there's Maxx Crosby just eating it up like dessert, like I eat dessert. It's just incredible to watch him play the game.
This is going to be a difficult question considering your history with the Raiders. But a year ago, when the season was wrapping up, dysfunction, typical Raider stuff, Antonio Pierce was on the way out. Maxx Crosby was even kind of hinting at the idea maybe he didn't want to be in Vegas anymore. But now here he is. He's signed up. He's happy. You got a legitimate coach now in Pete Carroll. Tom Brady's heavily involved in the running of the Raiders. Mark, are the Raiders turning the corner towards respectability?
Yeah, we're going to see, right? I mean, you look at the AFC West, and I'm hesitant to do this because a couple of years ago we had the AFC West. Is this the best quarterback collection, in the history of the National Football League? They had Derek Carr, they have Russell Wilson, they've got Justin Herbert, they've got Patrick Mahomes. Oh, my God, we've never seen anything like it. Will everybody go to the playoffs out of this division? Well, Russell Wilson came in and took a dump in his helmet, and Carr wasn't worth a squirt of piss. And, the whole thing just fell apart, right? Mm-hmm. But you look at the coaches in this division right now. We got Andy Reid, obviously the GOAT when it comes to coaching, right? Mm-hmm. But we got Sean Payton, who's won a Super Bowl. We've got Jim Harbaugh, who's won a national championship and been to a Super Bowl. We got Pete Carroll, who's won a Super Bowl and been to another and lost in the last seconds to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I mean, the coaching is legit. And one thing I know about Pete Carroll, man, he knows what he wants on the defensive side of the ball. Like, he knows how to get players on that side of the ball. And he knows he wants to run the football. He wants to control the tempo of the game. He wants to be able to win late. And now you've got Maxx Crosby signed up. And, oh, by the way, Maxx Crosby's lobbying for Aaron Rodgers to be signed there. Like, yeah, this feels like a situation where respectability could be, could return to the Raiders. I mean, I hope not. But it feels like respectability could return to the Raiders. And I've said this before in regards to the Raiders. Yep. And, it hurts me because I hate the Raiders with the white hot intensity of 1,000 suns. Of all the teams I hate, the number one team I hate is the Raiders. And that's, that's a strong statement because I hate a couple of teams, but nobody that I hate more than the Raiders. But I respect Pete Carroll. Obviously respect Maxx Crosby a ton. And the Raiders and the league, the National Football League, is a better place when the Raiders are relevant. And like, I believe that, a funny story, and I don't know that I've told this on this podcast. So I think it's a great Raiders story. So we might as well tell it, right?
I think, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this
my first year, my first year of broadcasting?
Yeah. This is good.
First year of broadcasting.
I was thinking everybody gather around.
Yeah. Gather around
at his feet.
So my first year of broadcasting, I'm working for ESPN. I just have retired. It's my first year. No, it's my second year in the league, second year of broadcasting. So I'm covering the Super Bowl, 2002 Super Bowl, I believe it was, between Tampa Bay and the Raiders, and it's in San Diego. It's in Jack Murphy Stadium. And so I've got this charity event, and this like a Friday night charity event, and I've got to be at the stadium 4 a.m. the next morning to do some stuff on SportsCenter. And so I'm at this charity event. I'm in the Valley, and this is before Uber existed, right? So I kind of give the old Irish goodbye. I sneak out the back, and I'm trying to catch a cab. It's probably 9 o'clock at night, and I want to, get back to the hotel so I can go to bed. And we're in the gas lamp district down in San Diego. And so I go up to the, to the valet people, and I go, hey, man, can you call me a cab? And they're like, yeah, we can call you one, but it's at least 2 hours away. Oof. And I'm like, what? And they're like, there are no cabs out here in the Valley. And we've been trying to get a cab here for the last hour and a half. And, I'll call you one. And I'm like, son of a gun. And literally, Mike, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And right about that time, this big Suburban pulls up. And these 5 guys come out all dressed in Raiders jerseys. And so they're like loading up. And I say, hey, guys, hey, man, can you do me a favor? Are you guys going to the Gas Lamp District by chance? Could I catch a ride with you? And they're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going down Gas Lamp right now. Hop in. I'm great. So there's a guy in the front. There's a guy, guy in the passenger, guy driving. And there's 2 guys in the back and then me. And I'm up against the passenger side window, right? And I'm just minding my business. I'm just kind of small. And we pull out of the parking lot. We get down on I-4 and or I-5, I guess it's I-5 in L.A. And we're, in bumper-to-bumper traffic. I mean, we're not even moving. Like, we're just going, a little bit creeping. And I can feel the dude on the driver's side window in the back seat keep leaning over and looking over at me. And he leans over and he looks, and he leans over and he looks. And you could see, the wheel spinning, right? The hamster is on the wheel, and it's just rolling around. And you've dropped a lot
of weight by this point. You've dropped a lot of weight, so you're not anywhere close to, NFL offensive line.
No, so I'm just sitting there, but I can see it out of the corner of my eye, right? And all of a sudden, the guy goes, I know who you are. And I'm not paying attention. I'm acting like I don't know that he's talking to me, right? He goes, I know who you are. And I'm like, who? And he's like, I know who you are. I go, oh, well, who am I? And he goes, you're that guy on ESPN that's always talking shit about the Raiders. Uh-oh. You're always talking shit about the Raiders. And I'm just sitting there going, me? And he's like, now everybody in the car, because we're stopped on I-5, like it's a parking lot. And now everybody in the car is turning and looking at me. He goes, yeah, you're the dude on ESPN. You used to play for the Broncos, and you're always talking shit on the Raiders. And everybody's turning around going, yeah, you're that guy. You hate the Raiders. You're always talking shit on the Raiders. I go, no, dude, that ain't me. That ain't me, right? And they're like, no, everybody in the car. There's 5 dudes, and we're in a parking lot on I-5 going, it's you. You're the guy. It's definitely you. I go, no, it's not me. It's not me. I go, you guys got me all wrong. And they go, no, you hate the Raiders. You're always talking shit. I go, no, that's not right. I go, now I am the guy on ESPN, and I am the guy that used to play for the Broncos, but you got me all wrong. I go, I love the Raiders. They're like, you don't love the Raiders. You're always talking shit. No, I love the Raiders. I love the Raiders. No, I go, I'm telling you, I love the Raiders. And I go, you know why I love the Raiders so much? I said, because I was 11-1 against your punk asses. You guys were my personal good things. And it was dead silent. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm either getting my ass kicked on I-5 or this could be really funny, right? And these dudes just burst out laughing. They were like, oh, that's great. And then we became best buddies. We had like a 2-hour car ride down to the gas lab district. And long story short, they dropped me off. We're high-fiving and doing all that stuff. Years later, this is like 15 years later, I'm in San Francisco and I'm filming an episode of Ballers, right? HBO's Ballers. And so we get done shooting this scene, and we're out. I don't know exactly where we are in San Francisco, but we're out. The water's behind us. The Golden Gate's behind us. We're like in this park setting or whatever. And there's a whole crowd, gathered around watching the filming of this episode of Ballers. And I hear, like, I'm standing around, and there's like I said, the whole streets are lined with people. And I hear this guy, stink. And finally I turn around and look and go, stink. And so I walk over, what am I going to do? Right? I walk over and say, hey, man, what's going on? He goes, dude, I was the driver in the car with all the Raider fans that were driving you to the gas lamp district. And he goes, dude, that was one of the funniest things I've heard. Like, and so we're high-fiving and stuff. So it ended up being great. But I will tell you, the league is a better place when the Raiders are relevant. And I feel like with Pete Carroll there kind of changing the culture, they got a chance. I mean, they still got a lot of work to do, but with Pete Carroll there, with Tom Brady there, I feel like they have a chance to become relevant once again and change the culture of the Raiders. And then, then they could become dangerous.
Yeah, and I'm with you. The league is better off when there's a good Raider team. Speaking of the AFC West, the Chargers made a big move, releasing 9-year Charger veteran Joey Bosa. Did that move catch you off guard?
Yes and no. I mean, he makes a lot of money, and I get the fact that he makes a lot of money. He's had a lot of injury issues, where he's missed time. The guy's still a legitimate edge rusher, right? He's still a guy that produces. But I every year about this time, I have that conversation with NFL fans, like, quit bitching about, when guys decide to sit out because they want more money, quit bitching about it, right? Because there is no loyalty, and there shouldn't be any loyalty, not from a player standpoint or from an organization standpoint. The organizations don't honor the contracts, neither should the players. So if you outperform your contract, you should sit out and say, I want more money. That's the way it should work. So Joey Bosa is one of those guys, really interesting. Like the players that get released and the guys that are out there on the free agent market. We've got DK Metcalf coming out and saying, hey, man, I want to trade. I want to get out of Seattle, and Seattle agreeing that he can go seek a trade. We've got guys like Devontae Adams that's going to get cut. He's going to be on the open market. That guy's still a really productive wide receiver. Amari Cooper is out there. They talk about Cooper Kupp being out there. There are a lot of guys out there on the open market that are potential, gap stops, and a couple of guys that I think in the right organization could really take an organization that's close to over the top. Like the Buffalo Bills, to me, are an interesting organization because you put a legit pass rusher on one edge. You got Ed Oliver out there, maybe trade for a guy like, you go get Joey Bosa, you trade for a guy like Myles Garrett. Yep. Yeah, that's a potential. DK Metcalf's a guy that, I think DK Metcalf, I think of a couple places in the AFC. I don't know about trading him in the NFC because of Seattle, like the Rams would make sense, but do you really want to do that? Maybe Tampa Bay, but do you really want to do that if you're competing in the NFC? But like a place like the Chargers, with Ladd McConkey inside, with the running game that they have, with the quarterback they have, you could see a DK Metcalf become very productive in that organization, or DK Metcalf to the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. That would be another one where you think, hey, the Buffalo Bills got to be close, right? What would get them over the top? maybe a pass rusher, maybe a DK Metcalf. That would be a really look like a nice signing to me for them. But I will say this, Mike, it's amazing. There are guys at the wide receiver position that are big time players, right? There are guys like Jamar Chase, big time player. There are guys out there like CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson. There's a few of those guys that line up at the X or whatever, and on the weak side of the formation, and they dominate football games. But I'm starting to wonder, with the resurgence of the run game that we saw last year, with what we saw happen in this league with the safeties. And, and I called it the Fangio effect, where the safeties were getting to be the highest paid dudes, right? $15 million a year, and everybody needed that middle of the field eraser. And then all of a sudden teams, and, and Kyle Shanahan told me it's the Fangio effect. Teams are playing that shell coverage, that shell defense, making you throw it underneath and catching them, and running up and tackling people. And that too high safety look, where all of a sudden a year ago, people just started cutting safeties right and left, right? They just said, no, we're not going to pay a safety. We're not going to. And these guys that were making $15, $16 million a year are now making, 8 and 7. And I'm wondering if some of that is starting to happen with the wide receiver position. You're still going to pay that $30 million for that elite level X receiver. But the rest of the guys, like I said, the Seattle saying we're willing to let go of DK. Cooper Kupp gone. They're saying, hey, we're willing to trade Cooper Kupp. Like I said, Amari Cooper. Like, you look at the list of guys that are on that list. Now, some of them a little bit older, obviously, but, still productive guys that I'm wondering if it's starting to move in that direction. Say, hey, we have to have one big-time wide receiver, but the rest of the guys, we're not going to pay them, 18, 19, 20 million bucks a year.
So are you convinced that it's taken hold, this new running back resurgence, or was last year just kind of a perfect storm? We had a number of talented backs that were out there in free agency. They all found new teams and they prospered. Like last year, okay, to me, the definition of a workhorse running back is if you've had over 300 rushing attempts. Last year, you had 6 different running backs who carried the ball more than 300 plus times. The year before that, you had 0. Derrick Henry led the league with attempts at like 280, 285. And then if you go back like 2 or 3 years prior to that, it was like 1 to 2 guys per year were carrying the ball over 300 times. So last year was definitely a big spike. But does that tell you that we're in a new pattern shift, or was last year an aberration?
Yeah, I think there's a new emphasis on the importance of running the ball. Now, obviously, there's some outlier freak shows, right? Saquon Barkley's a freak show. Derrick Henry's a freak show. Josh Jacobs, kind of a freak show. But you got Cook, and you got some other guys that I think did a great job. I think ultimately, Mike, some of it is we had some outlier freak shows out there, but I think there is a big emphasis. Like, the league is so cyclical all the time, right? And the emphasis became, hey, let's throw it 35 times, or let's throw it 75% or 65% of the time, or 70% of the time, whatever it is, right? And I think what you've seen is defenses make an adjustment, right? So they play that shell defense, and they also have a bunch of little guys. They play a ton of nickel, a lot of dime, and they have linebackers. I remember in my day, 250. I remember Levon Kirkland being 290 playing middle linebacker, right? Mm-hmm. And now what you see,
shoulder pads.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to see a middle linebacker that weighs 220, 222 or something. And so I think what you've seen is defenses get faster, but get much smaller. And I think what you've seen now is as offenses go, oh, really? You're going to play us in nickel and dime the whole time? And I just remember I always go back to my playing days with Mike Shanahan. We used to joke around, call him the Fire Marshal Bill, because he'd be super tan. Mm-hmm. But when he get pissed, like, he'd get red, right? And I just remember him being like livid. like if a team thought they could play us like in a shell defense or play us in nickel or dime, and he'd just be like, these sons of bitches think they can play us in a too high shell, and he'd just be beat red, like, these motherfuckers, it was just like, you'd be like, oh.
What a perfect freeze, by the way. Perfect.
Yeah. So, it would just be like, oh my gosh. And, we'll run them out of that too high shell. They think they're going to play that against us, and so it just like almost be fun, but it'd be like, you'd be like fired up, like, yeah, these sons of bitches, So it was one of those things that I look at it now and I think the reaction to the way defenses are playing are going, oh, really? All right. So we'll get into two tight end formations or maybe throw an extra back in there and get into base and we're just going to bludgeon you.
Well, you've always said that one thing that infuriates you is that it seems like a lot of offensive play callers, coordinators, head coaches, whatever, they want to win, but they want to win on their own terms, right? Like they want to win throwing the football. And I wonder if maybe the lessons finally dawned on them that, hey, defenses are daring us to run the football. Why don't we take them up on it?
Right. And I think the other thing is I think that's part of it. I think, ultimately, if you're going to play us so small all the time, the advantage for you guys is you have better pass defenders on the football field.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to play us in nickel all the time. I'm going to make sure your nickel guy can tackle.
Right.
I'm going to make sure that guy is a football player. And that, to me, is the toughest position on the football field because you got to be a run defender. You got to be an alley defender in the run game. You got to be able to play zone. You got to be able to play man-to-man against those little tiny slot receivers. So yeah, I think there's a lot to that going on, and then understanding the benefits and the value of being able to run the ball, especially in those nickel situations. Like, show me a team that really understands how to run the ball in 2nd and 7+, and what their nickel runs look like, and how to attack guys that may not be the strongest tacklers, the best, physical defenders. And I think there are some real juicy matchups in today's game if you understand how to run the ball and if you are committed to running the ball and, if you have guys that are willing to do the dirty work. If you've got guys that are multiple as tight ends, and running backs that are willing to block and do those things, receivers that are willing to block, you can be very effective. And I think that's one of the things we've seen and that we saw last year in the run game.
Well, it'll be interesting. I think we'll learn a lot about what you're just talking about with the first round of the draft this year. Ashton Genty, but not only Ashton Genty, there's a sense feeling out there. This is one of the deeper running back classes that we've seen in some time. Do you think we see maybe 3-4 running backs go in the first round, maybe later in the first round, but still go in spots higher in the draft than we've seen in recent years?
Yeah, I don't know that will be the trend, and it may be you may get a run in the second round on just 3 or 4 running backs. Right. But I think ultimately, I do think there is a push. There was a lot of time over the last few years that I've looked at. I just looked at teams, or I've consulted with teams. And it's been one of those situations where you say you want to run the ball, but you don't really want to run the ball. You just want an excuse to throw it more. And but I think I've seen a real shift in understanding what defenses are doing and where we might have an advantage. So it's just really interesting. Like I said, it always happens. Like the fullback almost complete went extinct, and now a lot of teams are playing with fullbacks again. Now they're a little bit, they've changed in the way they're built. They're no longer the Sam Gash guys that used to be out there. Just the cement head dudes that used to be out there, Lorenzo Neals and all those guys back in the day.
Moose Johnston.
Yeah, now But, they went, remember Larry Centers who caught 100 balls for the Arizona Cardinals, and then it became all these I don't even want to call them meatheads, but just like glorified guards in the backfield, and it was great and it was smash mouth and it was all that. And then they kind of almost went completely extinct. And then Kyle Juszczyk came back in the league and all of a sudden catching balls in Baltimore and San Francisco and all things he did. And now everybody needs one of those dudes. It's multiple, and so it's just really fun to watch kind of these cycles go through the National Football League.
Well, we're getting close and ready for free agency. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see a lot of movement. We're going to see guys getting overpaid in the first couple of days, and then there'll be teams sitting around looking for those day 2, day 3 bargains. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Good move by the Eagles. I guess no surprise. Zach Bond re-ups with them. Did you ever really think that he'd be allowed to hit free agency, or if he even wanted to hit free agency?
Yeah, I don't, he was a backup for a long time in New Orleans. Really, one of those guys that just burst on the scene. Cause I've had him in some games, some New Orleans games where he played, but, he was always behind, the starter over there who's really good. Why does all of a sudden escape my memory banks, but he was always kind of a backup special teams guy, and he jumped on the scene. Zach Bond did, and was absolutely phenomenal this year. And I watched a bunch of film on him. I went back through and watched all the playoff games, Mike, and I'm telling you what, you want to talk about being able to trigger on guys, being able to, drop and take away multiple Demario Davis is who I was thinking about. That's been the middle linebacker there forever. Excuse me, Demario. I love Demario. He's a great guy, and I can't believe your name escaped my brain, but that's the way it works with me. But watching Zach Bond, understanding how to get depth, right? Take away the first read in a route, take away maybe a basic in-cutting route. And as he's got curl flat and getting out through those zones and basically disrupting the quarterback's rhythm and still having the wherewithal to manipulate the traffic and still have, the swing pass, right? So he's got the curl flat area, and he just does a lot of things well, being able to get a drop at depth, instead of just being at 8 yards, being at 10 or 12 yards, taking away the intermediate route and then springing on an underneath throw and tackling it for a 3-yard gain, really good stuff. And, he signs a 3-year, $51 million deal with, I think, 34 guaranteed. And that to me, $17 million a year for a guy that was all pro this year, one of the better middle linebackers in the league. The Eagles are just kicking everybody's ass when it comes to roster construction and getting guys signed. You didn't have to sign Saquon Barkley. And yet they signed Saquon Barkley, made him the highest paid running back in the history of the league, $20 million a year, and they rewarded him. And one of the things I say about Saquon all the time, he's phenomenal, as we all know, 2,005 yards, but it's the ancillary things. It's blitz pickup. It's, picking up, it's blocking guys on quarterback designed runs. And then the thing that just blew me away about him is watching him sit out in the last part of that NFC Championship game and watching Shipley break a long run, and go down at about the 5-yard line, and they flash to Saquon Barkley, and he is cheering on the sideline like he just broke a record, like he just ran the ball. And then all of a sudden it's a 2nd down and goal, and Shipley goes over at the end of the game for a touchdown. And here comes Saquon Barkley sprinting onto the field and celebrating and jumping around in the end zone with his backup running back like he just scored. You reward dudes, you reward guys, and they have just become, in my mind, if I'm a free agent right now, I'm going, how do I get myself there?
Yeah.
How do I get myself to Philadelphia? Because that looks like the funnest place in the world to play.
Yep. All right. Well, good stuff. And I can definitely tell all of you out there, don't you worry, because when it comes to free agency and these NFL players on the move, nobody, and I mean nobody, studies more film than Mark Schlereth. He lives in New York City, the city that never sleeps. There's a million things to do at any given moment, and this guy will be grinding over tape what, 6-7 hours a day?
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, close.
But I over the last 3 days, I've probably spent the better part of 4 hours each day looking at. I looked at Milton Williams from the Eagles. There's a guy I'd like to sign in Denver. That guy can play. Zach Bond, Nick Bolton. I've looked at a bunch of I've looked at a lot of stuff in the last. I have.
He's a junkie, so don't
am
worry.
A junkie.
Whatever happens in free agency, Mark will be more informed than anybody. You can count on it.
I appreciate it, buddy. For everybody involved in the Seek Truth podcast, for Mike, I am Mark. Thank you so much for listening, and go Raiders. To hell. How about that?
I got you. That's good.
I was just kidding.